What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Open Ice Hits. We apologize for not having an episode out on Monday, but here we go. All it does is it gives us more time to gather some more stories and then attack it now. So we're going to begin with somewhat of a disappointing story, a scary one that made me kind of cringe when I saw it, and it's going to make a big impact for the Florida Panthers, and that's Aaron Ekblad goes down, a serious knee injury, so tough to watch, so brutal to watch, and you have to imagine that this makes such a big impact on this team that now you question, what can they do? Can they fill that hole? Do they have enough power, enough firepower defensively to be able to now make that run that we all anticipated them making before that type of injury? But before we tackle that question, your initial reaction, Durso, to seeing that horrific injury?
I'm trying to remember which one of us texted each other first after it happened. I either that or I remember seeing Twitter just explode like, oh no, this looks bad. Actually, I think what made me put it on because this happened on, I think it happened on Sunday, right?
Yeah, it did. That
Okay.
was the day it happened.
Because part of the Sunday thing and the reason why we didn't have an episode is because, and I mentioned it on 97.3 when I was on recently too, that I was down for the count because I got the second COVID vaccine. So
you think? I texted you. I said, yo, and I got an answer back from your wife saying, Kevin's knocked out. He's sleeping. He's snoring. He's flopping around like a fish. And I didn't get a text back from you. I was like, okay, no worries. Figured it would be, I don't know, an hour.
I didn't text you back because by the time I was actually up, you were in the middle of your own next thing. So
That's
that
fine.
was why I was letting you do your thing that afternoon.
Yeah, right.
No.
My ass. You were sleeping for 7 hours.
No, I was actually up right around the time your show started on Sunday afternoon, actually. But because of that, I was like, I'll just let him do his show, and then I'll worry about it later.
You're such a good guy.
But I think actually what made me put the game on was I think the first thing I saw was a tweet that said they're bringing the stretcher out for him. And that, like, you see something like that, you go, well, now I got to tune in. I got it. Like, there's certain things in your brain that trigger your, like, I got to get to this one right now. I can't wait any longer. Like, here's another example away from hockey, for example. I was sitting here on, I guess it would have been Monday night or something. Yeah, Monday night, Tuesday night, whatever it was. And I just sitting on Twitter and I see that in the NCAA tournament that an official passed out in the middle of the game. And I go,
dude,
geez, I got to put this on right now just to see what the hell happened because this is blowing up on Twitter right now. I got to put it on. The game's on.
That was scary. His head, the way it snapped back towards the ground. Oh my God, it's just terrible.
Right.
Terrible.
So I see that the stretcher's coming out for Aaron Ekblad, and I go, I've got to put this on right now. So I put it on, and I don't even put it on and watch in the moment because by that point I'm probably about 5 minutes late. So I just get it on NHL TV, and I just start rewinding. Get me back to what I need to see. That how did we get here? And I feel a little disappointed in myself, at least anyway, because the last show we did kind of the mid-season award update, if you will, and neither of us mentioned Aaron Ekblad when we talked about the Norris, and he's had quite the year. You know, he's had a really, really good year, and that's the shame of it, is that as soon as you saw it happen, if you're of a weak stomach, then I don't recommend watching it. You know, it turned out to be as bad as everybody thought it was going to be, and his season's over, and that's just terrible. It was a bad deal, and it wasn't done. You know, it wasn't like it was a purposeful injury or something like that. It's one of those freak things that happens when you're engaged in battle, and it sucks for him, and all the best to him because first of all, this is a guy who people probably don't remember, and we've talked a lot in previous shows about these high-end draft picks that people get really excited about, the guys who go first overall. We've talked about Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews. We're actually going to talk about Connor McDavid a little later on too, but we talk about guys like that, and we talk about them regularly because of the fact that they're so high profile from the day they came into the league with the draft pick to now when they're superstars, right? So Aaron Ekblad was actually a first overall pick.
Well, I like that you brought this up because it's almost like I was thinking about this because we talk about, all right, what are the topics? And I'm thinking, all right, Aaron Ekblad is like your perfect example of Mike Trout being in Los Angeles playing for the Angels and Derek Jeter playing for the Yankees. And it's like, it's almost as if, let's say Aaron Ekblad plays until he's 40 years old as a stay-at-home defenseman, and he was just like a phenomenal player for a long period of time in Florida compared to in Boston. You are now talking about a Zdeno Chara type of player that is looked at as, wow, the big Z, this is his career. Compared to if he played 20 years in Florida, you just don't have that type of talk behind your name. Like, people don't put the same level of respect if you play in Florida compared to playing for the New York Rangers or the Boston Bruins. Or it's like if Derek Jeter played for the Seattle Mariners for his career. You do not talk about Derek Jeter the same way. And it's unfortunate because Aaron Ekblad is that type of player where he's a stud. He's unbelievable. He is your top pairing guy that can change your franchise, change the game night in and night out, and give you 20-plus minutes at an elite rate. And it's like it slides under the radar. And even with a season that the Florida Panthers are at the top of the league, still flies under the radar. It's crazy to think about that.
Well, case in point, we just did the show a week ago. Mid-season awards. Let's talk about who's going to win, who we think might win, the Norris, the Calder, the Hart, all that stuff, right?
Who did we leave out?
No, we didn't leave anybody out. It's who we talked about. But case in point, it's 2021. We come on and we say, the guy who's probably leading the charge for the Norris, the top defenseman in the NHL right now, Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman was a second overall pick in 2009. Does anybody even remember that part? No, because nobody thinks about the need that a team has, that when you can find that guy, when it's, let's put it this way, Andrei Vasilevsky, who we also talked about in that show, it's a first-round pick as a goalie. That's rare anymore because not everybody goes and takes that leap that, and ironically enough, I'm saying this the day after the Florida Panthers signed a goalie prospect selected in the first round to his entry-level deal. And again, this is another type of guy that, because of where he plays, could totally fly under the radar for a little bit because of the fact that nobody thinks about it like that because of the market that they're in, when in reality, that's just good management. If you think you've got that guy as a draft pick, the stud defenseman, the top-notch goaltender, the two most important positions in the game, as much as everybody loves the goal-scoring part of it, you got to go for it when you can. And that might be two of the best examples, two guys who everybody talks about right at the top, Vasilevsky and Hedman. And they're both high-end first-round picks that you almost don't remember were selected as first-round picks because of where they play and how long it took for that team to really reach the pinnacle of success and to win a Stanley Cup. Because if it took 5 years, and from 2009, if they won a Stanley Cup, if they won the Cup in 2015, which Vasilevsky wasn't even starting then, but if they would have won the Cup in 2015, totally different conversation.
Yeah.
But they didn't, and it took them 10 years from the time they drafted guys like Vasilevsky and Hedman and built on that from there with other draft picks that became part of that winning culture and that winning team. And it's
all right. So only 10 more years to the Flyers win the Cup. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Actually, the joke I was going to make, the joke I've made about that in previous years is that in my lifetime living in this particular city that struggles to win sports championships, having a friend who is from a city that does not struggle to win sports championships by any stretch, who has admittedly been spoiled growing up with the success that city has had. I'm sure you can deduct
can't name the city, right? You can't say
right. You can't figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's probably the only city in the entire, outside of maybe a New York type city, that has won a championship in every major sport at least once. But beside the point, the Phillies won the World Series in 2008. Then it was technically the 2017 season, but it was 2018 when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Was just going to need to be 2028. 10 years. Every
right.
10 years you get a championship.
That's fine. We'll take it.
I don't know if it's going to be them, but, we'll see. But
probably not, considering the way they're playing right now. I guess
8 years is a long time.
It is. I guess the question now, though, is for the Florida Panthers, is it possible? To ask the question, is it possible to fill that hole? The answer is probably no. But I guess what is their best case scenario? What can they do? What should they try? Look, not that this would ever really be the difference in Aaron Ekblad and filling that void. But if a guy like Shane Gostisbehere, a Florida kid, I think that's a big part of why this is even discussed the way that it is, for him to be passed through waivers, them have an opportunity to maybe try their best ability to get a defenseman, he clears waivers. What are they looking for? What can they do? Because this is detrimental to a serious push, in my opinion. So how do you try and fix that? How do you possibly do that? Within? Do you try and just do it from within? Or do you have to go out there and make some sort of splash? And to be fair, I do not think Shane Gostisbehere is good enough to play that type of role, but I find it fascinating because it's a hometown kid story that factors in.
No, you're right. I said as much on 97.3 the other day, where it's a fit in terms of he plays the position and he's from Florida and could certainly go there and play a role. He's not the replacement for Ekblad by any stretch. I don't know if there's going to be many people out there who are. I assume that the best explanation is that the rental avenue is the way they would look. So you'd have to find somebody who doesn't have more than a year left on the contract.
Like a Savard, maybe? Is that kind of an area?
You know, I was going to try to, and I don't know if he has a year left, but one of the names that I know is out there, I'll do a quick Google search on him really quick to see if he has 1 year left or more. But there's a name that came to mind, and it's unfortunate to pick on this team per se, but this is the position that they're in. But I think you look at teams like Buffalo, and you wonder if they have somebody who can fill that void. And
would they trade Darlene?
No, I wouldn't go that far. But like,
okay.
I was thinking of Brandon Montour, like, and he's on an expiring contract.
Yeah.
So there you go. Like, because the one thing that Florida does have that makes this work a little bit is they have cap space.
Montour would be a good – I mean, like, look, due to circumstances, of course, if you told me you're in Florida's position, this happens, and you pick up Montour, I mean, it's not the worst case in the world. I mean, look, I'm talking very circumstantial here, of course. Let's not blow this out of proportion. Right. But based off of the circumstances, you can get Montour. You could do a lot worse.
Well, exactly, and that's the point. Like, I don't know, and I don't know that you're really – that's why I said you're not going to go out and maybe find the direct minutes replacement for Ekblad or role replacement for Ekblad perfectly. It probably doesn't exist, you know? Like, it's hard to replace a guy who you know should be in the Norris conversation this year. I mean, you're not going to go and pick on any other team that I can think of out there that has a guy that would be worth that. You know, or would
Am I being too high on Montour because the Buffalo Sabres look like Mario Lemieux Penguins in their prime when they play the Flyers, or am I being realistic on my assessment?
No, I don't think you're being. I don't think you're being over the top because I think Montour's a nice player. It's just I still don't think he's going to replace what Ekblad.
No one would. No one will.
Nobody would. Exactly. I mean, and look, yes, there's guys that would replace what Ekblad gives you. They're just not available. Obviously, I mean, you get that. You don't want to replace it. You know, you don't want to be sending it somewhere else. You don't want to be in that situation. You've got what everybody else wants. So I wouldn't be shocked if they do something on that smaller end. And again, let's put it this way. Montour has two things going for him that Gostisbehere didn't. He has less term and he has a smaller cap hit. It's not much smaller. It's $3.85 million, but it's significantly smaller enough that you notice the difference. And because there's no term, I mean, that's not that far of a step above the other guy who the Flyers could have waived to clear the roster spot in Erik Gustafsson, who has the same expiring contract and $3 million cap hit. You kind of sit there and you go, what kind of season is each guy having? Montour, Gustafsson, for example. You go, well, $850,000 extra is not that much to pay for the 1 year or half a year or whatever when let's just say Ekblad's contract is going to come off of their books a little bit. They're getting cap relief because he's not going to play. That's an LTIR situation.
Well, do you think – I agree with you with the 1 year deal thing, but I just wonder, because it was such a gruesome injury, I mean, is the rollover going to be a little bit into next year where maybe they look for someone with 2 years? Or I don't know. Like, is it definitely a 1 year situation for Ekblad? When Kevin Durant popped the Achilles, it was they eased him back into it. It's like, hey, it took a little bit more than a year. This Ekblad injury, I wouldn't be surprised if it was more than like just this season. Like, it's going to bleed into next, I would imagine. So unless they think of, hey, let's just get a rental for this season, we can apply maybe something in the offseason to fill that void instead of looking for the whole entire fix right now.
I'm trying to figure out. It said it was a fracture. So that's a little interesting to me
Oh,
too. I
wow.
mean,
Okay.
because it's not the same thing as a ligament injury where you're really trying to make sure that you're not overdoing it. You're not that you want to overdo an injury that requires a surgery and 12-week recovery, but at the same time, all you have to do right now is fess up that at the beginning of April, which, there's a lot of season left in front of you anyway. So guys are going to be playing. It's going to be a different kind of offseason again, no matter how you shape it up. You know, I mean, 12 weeks becomes at least 2.5 months or 2 to 3 months. That's all of April, all of May, most of June. He's not that far off when you think about it from possibly being able to resume activity around the same time everybody else tries to, around that mid to late July, early August period where you get about a month to ramp it up before camp. And if he gets that opportunity, I'm not taking it off the table. I mean, look, there's guys who have major surgeries, and depending on how late in the year it is, the first month or so may be off the table. But
Right.
I don't think he doesn't play next year, period, or that it's a struggle to get him back. Like I don't think that this is an injury that we go, he's out for 3/4 of a year now. The way we do with an ACL, for example. An ACL, you start to think about serious long-term implications and how the recover. Like if you tear your ACL in February, the start of next season is already in jeopardy because of the fact that even if you are fully recovered from the surgery portion, you're not in a position to test it out to that extreme just yet. This is, to me, I think, a situation where if it's possible, it might be the same thing because it's already April, but it's not going to be that far off, and he's going to be close to that same timeline as everybody else in the offseason, which could be great for them. I mean, I think the only thing that you really start to get concerned about with him is you were making a push. You were a good team and had a lot of potential this year. And let's face it, you're challenging the defending Stanley Cup champions in that division, which is saying an awful lot for where you were the year before.
Yeah.
They were in the playoffs last year as a 10 seed, I believe.
Yeah, they
And it's
always,
like,
it's like they have that hot run and then they fall off a little late where like you think they're going to do it. And then at the end of the regular season, you kind of lose the hope for them. But this is now in the territory of, and I'm a big picture guy and I hate that. It's always like, can they win the championship? Do they have enough? I always think big picture with teams, but this could be to the level of changing the outcome of the end goal for sure, and it's just very unfortunate. But you know what? Sometimes there's this little push by the fellas when you're that close of a team and when you're that good of a team and something happens, like you saw it with the Eagles, with Carson Wentz going down, everyone stepped up. And when you're that close and you're on that great high, sometimes that is almost extra motivation to prove everybody wrong. And maybe that could be the difference in this team getting over the hump. Like this could, in a weird way, be a more of like a sense of urgency push.
well, this was late second period of that game on Sunday too. And they were already up 3-1. I get that, but was there any doubt they were losing that game afterwards? I mean, I guess there was a little bit because yes, seeing something like that can shake your team mentally. It can make you more concerned about the player that just left the ice than the game in front of them. But they all said afterwards, and I'm sure they looked it because the final score was 4-1. They looked like they were out there trying to win a game for a teammate. He's not here anymore to help with this. We got to finish the job, and they did. And
that's the adrenaline rush side of it, though, because as it kind of,
sure it is.
Yeah, it kind of dwindles away, and you got to make sure someone in the room kind of keeps it going.
And look, maybe it was beneficial for them. The next game out after that was Detroit, so from a competitive level, from a roster construction level, you were the better team, so you do get another win. You're not playing Tampa yet, you're not playing Carolina yet, but I still think that there's motivation, and the more they keep putting together results, the more it's going to build up that they have the possibility to turn this into that kind of season where now you're playing for the fallen teammate a little bit. Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. I mean, I didn't even go so far. I didn't realize that with the way that Tuesday's results went, that by Florida beating Detroit as they should, and Tampa losing a game to Columbus, those two teams are tied at the top of the division. And I'd have to check to see if there's anybody else who challenges, but I believe that's the most points in the league right now, tied for most points. I mean, 50 is the mark right now, and that's saying a lot when you're one of the teams that has that kind of potential here. That you're right there with. I mean, they're right there with them, and I think that this is what started when Bobrovsky signed, and when they started to make steps in that direction, that they looked like they could be that kind of team. I think the big ones were, it was Bobrovsky and Joel Quenneville. It's like, look at the coach they hired, look at the goalie they signed, they're going for it. And then last year was like this big disappointment because they've homegrown players, they've got, now they've brought in big names. Why didn't it all come together? And now it's all come together a little bit. Like they've really found a way to bond as a team, to play for each other as a team. They're an interesting watch. I mean, they're still not on that level where I think they're must-watch TV, and it's just the market. It's not the team that you think of first. But if you give them an opportunity in the playoffs, let's say, because they're based on where I see the Central, the Central, I believe they're in. Yeah. So it's so confusing anymore.
I know. I'm thinking like, wait, Central Florida. Yeah, you're right.
But based on where,
what's the name of the Central, Durso? What's the sponsor name?
The Discover Central Division.
Okay.
Why'd you make me do that? I don't even like that they sponsor these things. But based on where they are, I mean, there's an 11-point gap to the last team in the playoff picture. And there's a tie for fourth, by the way. So you've got two teams battling it out to get into the playoffs. And there they are, tied for the division lead, 11 points to the good as April begins.
Yeah.
They're making the playoffs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they are.
So I wonder if actual playoff exposure, not in a qualifying round series, will do something for them. Because I feel like they need to not just be there, but show success in that part of it as well. Like if they were to play, let's just take it based on the way it looks right now. If they were to play Carolina, because that would be the 2-3 right now, and win, I think people would take notice if they had to play Tampa.
Yeah, that would be a bit, like, even Carolina, like, even if they lost to Tampa, maybe it was a little bit ugly or whatever, Tampa's that dominant, but to beat a team like Carolina in a series, that would make a pretty big splash in terms of, hey, this team is for, because that Carolina team is legit. They are no joke.
It's funny you bring up the Tampa team, because that was one of the future topics I was going to run by you is there anybody, and we'll save it for another show, is there anybody who can challenge them?
Philadelphia Flyers. What's so funny?
Oh, come on.
What?
You saw what? I mean, were you following my Twitter account last night?
Well, that's why you mentioned Quenneville, and I was like, oh, this is the perfect transition, because at the time of AV being hired, I wanted Quenneville. And I'm not anti-AV, but I mean, look, if we want to talk, we talked about Montour, Buffalo, like this is a good transition. Do you have any final thoughts on the closing of Florida, and then we can transition a little bit into the debacle?
I was pitching that topic because of the fact that Florida, I think, can be talked about a little bit, like, because Florida's one of those teams that points-wise is there. Carolina was one that came to mind as well. Obviously, Tampa's right there. I mean, I would think about your Washingtons and, Colorado, Toronto, these teams that are right there, and we're going, yeah, I know. We both have a horse in the race.
Yeah, you texted me last night. Oh, I'm a Colorado guy.
Colorado is such a fun team to watch.
Yeah, because you like watching people throw helmets at each other, and McKinnon's out there chucking helmets.
That caught me off guard.
Yeah, when you texted me that, first off, you sent me like a 3-second clip, so I'm like, it's almost one of those out-of-context Twitter accounts, and it's like, the hell is going on? Like, what the hell is going on?
It was the first clip I could find because, back to the, when you see that Aaron Ekblad's down and the stretcher's coming out, you have to put it on. I saw a tweet come through that goes, Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen are fighting people right now. I'm going, what? I get that the score's bad, but what's going on? And then I saw how it actually came to be. Like, McKinnon's the one who really gets
it. Yeah, he did.
And I'm going, look at this team, look at the way that this team plays the game and goes after each other and plays for each other. That's a unit.
What are you trying to say?
That I don't watch a full unit every night.
Okay, all right, good transition. Let's get into it. The Buffalo Sabres snapped their 18-game losing streak, and this was inevitable because the game before, to lose their 18th, the Flyers got dominated, and I mean dominated for 40 minutes of play, and in the third period, the Flyers didn't take it. The Sabres sabered. That's what they did. The Sabres fell apart, and they were a miserable team, and they collapsed. And they even said it afterwards. I mean, they full-on collapsed. They had a panic attack as a team. No credit to the Flyers. No credit at all, even though AV put it all on the veterans, and I want to give the veterans credit. The veterans sucked for the first 40 minutes, too, where I can't give them credit. But the Flyers, this is my problem. So the Sabres are a disaster, and we can talk about how much this meant to them to snap that losing streak, whatever. The Flyers got dominated for 5 out of 6 periods against that team. As much as the Sabres snapping the losing streak is the story, I almost look at, and I don't even think this is just because we care about the team. I really do think it shows you more of like, whoa, this Flyers organization right now is a joke. They got dominated. You thought it's rock bottom to lose 18 straight. Imagine getting dominated by the team that lost 18 straight. And they did for 5 out of 6 periods. So you could take that wherever you want to. You can look at the Sabre side, Flyer side, both sides. But, I mean, Jesus, it is just terrible to watch this orange and black team play.
All right, then. I'm going to look at both sides then because I'm going there. So, first of all, how fluky was the game-tying goal in Monday's game that bounces about 4 times before it goes into the net? Like you said, that's the Sabres sabering, if you will.
Is that one Sean Couturier on the side of the net? Is that just to remember?
But it hit, okay. Yeah, but it hit. I mean, it's a shot that doesn't. First of all, I don't think it was Provorov who took it, I believe, and Provorov doesn't even get the most of it. It hits off Tage Thompson's stick. I think Middlestat might have gotten a piece of it first too. Then Couturier gets a piece. It goes over JVR's stick into the net. The thing's bouncing around like a pinball machine, and it goes in. And something I've done plenty of times recently, watching games that the Flyers play in, I audibly laughed when it went in because I went, of course it did.
Yeah, I didn't want them to win. I didn't want them to win.
Not even that, because it was just of course it did, because that's how bad Buffalo is right now. That you go, of course it's going to go to this. It's going to go to overtime. And here's the thing, too. There's a very valid point. I've seen the way Buffalo plays in overtime. They weren't winning in overtime. Because they were the only way they were going to win that game is if they managed to rag for 5 minutes and take all control away from the Flyers, who are decent at 3-on-3 because the space is available, and teams are more prone. Let's be honest. No matter who you are, no matter how great of a team you are, you're more prone to a mistake with less guys on the ice than you are with 5-on-5. All right, so they find a way to get that. So they find a way to lose on Monday, and the streak continues, and to the Flyer side of this then, because you mentioned rock bottom. I don't know what rock bottom is anymore, and I'll tell you why. Because they've hit this point at least 3 times this month.
It's a gut check game, though. How many times do you want to hear that? It's about what was the word Brian Elliott used that I kind of laughed at? Not that I'm not like anti-Brian Elliott, but he said it was like not a bounce back game, but it was something where, regardless, it was that type of, hey, it's a real gut check. Yeah, well, you had 30 gut checks already. Let me know when the gut checks are over.
Here's the problem. From having played the game, the guys are going to lean on those cliches as much as possible in front of the camera when they don't want to get into what's going on behind the scenes, probably. It's why it's telling, and I know we're going to get into somewhat, maybe not too much, because it's not, it's kind of a non-story now that the waiver thing happened and he cleared. But Shane Gostisbehere talked about leaving goalies out to dry and not playing well enough and getting, he said, absolutely effing beat up. I will censor it slightly, but I'm not going to take the word right out of the picture like some places do. Things like that, just beat up and making the goalies look like crap. And it's like, what are you supposed to do? Not what are you supposed to do, but it's like, at least there was an honest response. That was honest, straightforward, to the point, saying it like it is.
AV's not being honest, and I'm pissed off about it. He said, Durso, he literally said last night, we were ready to play. We were ready to play. He's been saying that all fucking week. Sorry for the F-bomb here. I can't stand it. I cannot stand that we were ready to play. This is the right way of hockey that will win us games. Like, that was before, 10, 15 games ago. We're playing the right way. Just trust us. I mean, I'm not anti-AV. I'm not fire AV, but what is he doing right now?
He said, but to me, he said that differently than he's ever said it before. Like, he says it and sounds like he believes it when he says it. That looked like saying it to try to use the cliche to make it seem like he believes it, but he sounded defeated. And this is, he sounded defeated. Travis Konechny said, I don't know, about 5 times in 2 minutes in his interview, which I also referenced in my takeaways article after the game, because quite frankly, I'm, as someone who covers the team, I'm out of answers. I don't know how to describe where they go, what they're doing wrong. Like, or not what they're doing wrong. It's not that, but there's only so many times you can say you don't manage the puck well. You turn it over too much. You don't cover defensively. You miss your opportunities offensively. You give up a lot of goals off the rush. The goaltending is suspect. The defense is suspect. You have forwards who don't back check. Like, how many times can you say the same thing?
Those were your leaders too, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Those were two of your leaders, by the way, who didn't skate.
Yeah, no back check. Ridiculous.
But regardless, there comes a point where, and we do this show with the scope of the league in mind. And that's why, this is why you give the Florida Panthers the opening slot, because you give the opening slots and the topics to the teams that are worthy of the topics, right? And the discussion. When the playoffs roll around, as I just said, the Florida Panthers will be there. And that's why, even if it's a market that you don't associate with hockey, even if you're going to make the joke that they're used to playing in front of no fans anyway because nobody ever goes to the games, you can go ahead and say that. Here's the bottom line. They're one of the best teams in the league right now, and they're going to make the playoffs. And whether that lasts one round, because they're in an extremely competitive division in their own right, whether it lasts one round, 2 rounds, or they go further than that, they're going to be, as a hockey fan, worth your time because they've earned it. They've played a good, solid season. They're going to be on your TV as one of 16 that make it. Go ahead and see where they go. And if they become one of 8 or one of 4, then they've really earned your time. Yeah. This is a team that has not earned your time and doesn't earn the time of discussion. Not unless, they earn the time of discussion when they do something like place Shane Gostisbehere on waivers, when they make a response to this whole debacle that's going on consistently, from 9-0 to 8-3 to the Rangers to 6-1 to the Buffalo Sabres, who hadn't won in 17, 18 games. It does, once they make a response to that is really significant, and that means that somebody's no longer part of this picture, that's when they become worthy of the discussion because it's newsworthy. Yeah. But they're not newsworthy when they just do the same thing over and over again. It just becomes repetitive.
Well, let's get into AV a little bit because I do have some questions about him. And he's one of the most winning coaches in NHL history. Doesn't have the Stanley Cup, but he does have the resume to back it up. And now you see all the Rangers fans and Vancouver fans. Like, AV gets ripped, and I mean literally destroyed. Now, I know that there's a lot of fan bases out there that are very irrational. And, do you think that, before I continue, do you think it's a fair comparison to say, now Doc Rivers has a championship. He has won. But I almost look at Doc Rivers similar to Alain Vigneault with, when you hire him, it's, wow, you got a guy with a big-time resume, has respect to the room. The resume speaks for itself. Now, he doesn't have the championship like Doc Rivers does it with the Celtics, but been to Game 7 with Vancouver. He's been to the Stanley Cup with the Rangers. He has the background to support it. Would you agree with that comparison?
I agree with the resume, yes.
Okay, so, this season has been a disaster. I don't think that there's many solutions. So, I think AV can do better things than what he's doing. I don't even know if what he would do that would be better would be enough to fix all the problems. But here's where I'm having a concern. The part where you're now scratching Oscar Lindblom. I don't think Oscar Lindblom is some phenomenal player right now. So, I'm not claiming that he is this insane piece you got to have in your lineup. But here's what I know. The last couple of games, he played with Claude Giroux, and they were phenomenal. Those two together were producing. He was getting to the greasy areas. What do you expect to happen where you put him with Nolan Patrick and you put him on the bottom line with a guy who's struggling? You're putting your player who was just succeeding in a worse spot. Now you have to scratch him. So it's like you forced the scratch on your own team because you had something clicking, but you wanted to move all these pieces around again. And it's like Joel Farabee, one of your top guys. You're forcing him now to struggle again because you're putting him on the fourth line with guys. You're not putting your guys in the best positions possible. Now, putting Oscar Lindblom with Claude Giroux for 5, 6, 7, 8 games, are you going to have that same impact you did in those 2 games? I don't know. I don't think that's the difference in winning hockey games, but it's bonkers to me, and I'm baffled that he's making some of these decisions and, being hard on Carter Hart. You just watched Brian Elliott get pulled. You just watched Alex Lyon get, beat up a little bit. And granted, he hasn't played in a while, so I don't expect him to go in there and shut everybody out. But I feel like he's being obnoxiously difficult on Carter Hart. Maybe he knows he can, but I'm just confused on AV's decision-making to this point. And I'm not a fire AV guy, like I said. I'm not overreacting. I think he went from Jack Adams level to the worst ever. That's not how it works, right? I mean, there's an in-between here. But I'm just a little confused on some of his decisions. So what are your thoughts on some of the things I brought up?
Well, all right, I'll agree with you on AV did not have a good month in front of the microphone because he said multiple things that came back to bite him. From trending in the right direction, which I believe was after the third Washington game. They had a homestand. They lost all 3 games to Washington. And that was the first time they played Buffalo in the month and had to scramble their way back for a win. And that was the way their week went. And he said, but we're trending in the right direction. And they proceeded to go out and continue losing. And I believe they won the next game, actually. They won against the Rangers, but it took overtime to do that. And then they lost 9-0 to the Rangers. And everybody was right away screaming all over Twitter and wherever else you could. Trending in the right direction is a 9-0 loss, huh? Embarrassment is trending in the right direction, right? Okay, so that's the first one. Then he says the thing about Carter Hart with he needs to work harder in practice. And it's like, it's not a good idea to do that publicly. If you want to go to the guy specifically behind closed doors and say, I need you to just work in practice, I don't have a problem with them shutting him down right now. Honestly, don't worry about it. Shut him down for the year if you want to and admit that that's what you're doing. That's fine, but don't call him out like that.
But isn't that AV, though? Because he did that last year. He called out Giroux. He called out, is that just who he is? He's going to be a guy that's like, hey, I need more out of you.
It is, but it seemed warranted when the team was looking with the potential that they had last season to sit there and say whenever a JVR was struggling, I need more out of him. That's why the vet goes to the fourth line. It doesn't have the same effect on guys who have had a good year or good previous year. And then you go, well, let's tell the 22-year-old or the 21-year-old, I need more.
Yeah, fair point.
You're demanding a lot out of somebody who doesn't have the experience. It's one thing to sit there and look at Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek, James Van Riemsdyk, Sean Couturier even, and go, you've been in the league for how long? I expect more out of you. They can take it. They can. But you don't need to damage one individual by saying I need more or work harder in practice or or to even bring up Carter Hart's practice habits, if you will, when everybody knows what kind of worker he is. That's not a good it's just not a good look. So that's the kind of the problem that you're having and then let's put it this way. In addition to all of the other stuff with AV going through things like trying to have to sit there. And I even turn around, I think I wrote in the takeaways, he's got an unenviable job. Who wants to sit there after you watch the game like that and now have to be the person to explain it, right? To try to answer the questions. And it's why he sounded, in my opinion, so defeated after the loss to Buffalo. It's like, I don't even know what to say anymore. So all I can do, he basically, because you mentioned the thing about him saying, but they were ready to play, I feel for my team, things like that. He actually said the answer twice in a row to 2 different questions. He answered with the same answer because it sounds like he's out of things to say. It sounds like he's out of options, ideas, no ways to fix it. And he's trying to I don't want to say trying to pass the buck because that to me is what would happen if they blame the coach in this situation. You're just passing the buck again from the group that's been here for so long. So I'm not sure what they do to fix it. I don't think AV's the problem per se. It's just that he's had a really rough go of it in the public eye with how he's tried to explain some of these things, especially when you look at all of the problems collectively. No team in this league gives up 75 goals in a month because of a 22-year-old goaltender alone.
Yeah.
You need to have a god-awful team to give up that kind of, to give up 4 goals a night. And it really is a cop-out to say it's just the goalie, the 22-year-old goalie who everybody was so high on all that time. It's really a cop-out to look at it and say, well, he's the guy who has to work harder in practice.
Yeah, when Brian Elliott gets pulled the next day. Not that it's Brian Elliott's fault, but I don't think I've seen
Brian Elliott's fault either.
Yeah, I haven't seen Gustafsson win a stick battle once this season. I mean, it's just crazy. It really is.
Well, then that's the part you should appreciate about AV's presser last night is that he did at least sit there and say there were there was a way to take away opportunities by just winning a stick on puck battle. You damn right there was,
Yep.
And everybody, it becomes you don't become blind to it when you watch it enough times and explain enough times. You asked me if I mentioned defensive zone coverage at one point in time. If I'm pointing it out, I turn around. My response back to you was, I've literally broken down almost every goal against in the entire month, which is an awful lot. And it's like, I believe me, if I can see it, there's a reason why I write like that. By the way, I write like that for the reason that you talk about stuff like you do. I'm going to explain it to you so you know how to see it, right?
Yes.
To whoever's reading, whoever can see, because I used the visuals for one of the articles at one point in time. Like, actually two, I'm sorry. I used visuals for two. One of them happened to be a win, by the way, because one of them was the Buffalo win. But I used that picture because they talk about playing as a 5-man unit, right?
Yeah.
5-man defense unit, which is actually very true. It's the way you have to play. Like, and I even mentioned it, when 5 guys end up on one side of the ice on a goal against, that's 5 guys playing as individuals trying to defend one situation. When you're not playing your responsibility as the 5-man unit, you're not playing together for each other. You're just trying to be the one guy who takes care of the whole situation by himself, and 5 guys taking care of the whole situation by themselves leads to a goal against.
Yeah.
Then they all get together, and there's that picture of all 5 of them in front of the goalie. And I think I even tweeted it out like that. I went, yeah, that's not what they mean by 5-man unit, where you're 5 men together as a unit. No, that's not what it means.
I don't know
don't
what
take
Sam.
It literally.
I don't know what Sam Moran was doing on the first one though. He was so off on the right-hand side of the ice and leaving them wide open. It was terrible. But your text was, "I'm kind of out of things to say to an extent about this team," and I responded with, "Did you ever mention their D-zone coverage? Maybe you missed that one." It's just ridiculous. But yeah, so to put a bow tie on the Flyers, they stink. Let's get to McDavid. Let's get to Connor McDavid because
let's do.
Yes, let's get to McDavid. He gets fined for the elbow, and I think there was a little bit of a head snap and a little bit of this and that? Yeah, probably, but I heard a really interesting viewpoint on that I just didn't even think about, even though it's probably pretty standard, but look, when you're a superstar in this league, you get hacked, you get cross-checked, you get this, you get that, you get all the extra elbow, you get a little face wash here and there, and at some point it's, you just get annoyed, you get bothered, and you get that type of reaction. Crosby has done it. There's been many of stars that have done it. Mark Messier has done it. You see all these players. If that's what the version of Connor McDavid's frustration is going to be, it's you're not in the worst situation in the world if you're the NHL. Am I okay with it? Look, if that was, this is what I was asked. If that was Tom Wilson, what would the reaction be? And the reaction would be, realistically, it would be brutal. It would be harsh. It would be, this guy's a cheap shot guy and all that. So, to summarize, I'm okay with the fine. I don't think it's a big deal. It's a slap on the wrist. It's a, hey, McDavid, we got to do something because you're the superstar. You gave a little bit of an elbow. We get it. All right, let's move on. I'm not that worried about it. Let's go to the next game kind of thing for me. I get it from the league perspective. I get the frustration from McDavid perspective, and let's move on. I think there was a little bit of a head snap back, though, to be fair.
All right. So I got 2 things for you on this one. First off, shout out to the friends of Brodes Media, Nasty Knuckles, because Nasty Knuckles tweeted that if it was Zach Ronaldo, he would have been thrown in jail for it.
Yep.
Which, hard to disagree with that. That's the truth, right? I think he should have been suspended for a game.
Wow.
Frankly.
You go game.
Yeah.
I think that's a little harsh.
No, I don't think it is, though, because
Why?
to me, because he goes out of his way to do it.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Now that he's registered as a guy that's on the watch list, if you will, now it's like, all right, if it happens again, you know what I mean, though? There's a big difference. If you've never done something like that, and then it gets to this level, it's one time, an elbow, I don't know.
For me, it was the nature of it. First of all, it's late by a long shot.
It is.
Your elbow comes up pretty damn high to do what you're doing. And I don't
Do you put any stock into the laughing on the bench, with the cover in his face? That's what you go back to the bench, and after you take a hit like that, you're shown smiling, smirking, laughing under your glove as if you somewhat sold it a bit.
Oh, you're talking about Kotkaniemi, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were talking about McDavid. I'm going.
No,
McDavid
geez,
was
God, no. If he would, that would be different.
No, but at the same time, I mean, it's a frustrating game. It was done kind of retaliatory to an extent, and at the same time, here's the thing about it: we just talked about in talking about McDavid and Matthews and these guys who are the challengers for the points race and the scoring race, and everybody should watch them. And it finally got me to a point where I turned around and I said to you these exact words: Connor McDavid's the best player in the league right now. I moved on from the Sidney Crosby thing. Sidney Crosby is number 2 now. Connor McDavid's the best in the league. But if that's the best in the league, then you've got to set a precedent that that's not okay. You just have to, because.
But they did.
Then
they fined him.
Did they actually officially?
Yeah, they did. Yeah, he's fined.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that he was actually officially fined. I've seen a lot of people saying he should be.
It was peanuts, but he got fined.
Well, of course, but I would have to me. Yeah, but I mean, you need to do it to a greater extent than here's a few bucks, because let's put it this way: you get fined whatever it is. What do you get fined? $5,000, $3,000, whatever it is. Like, cool. Pass the hat around the locker room and let his teammates pay for it. And then it doesn't do anything, right? The guy makes what, $10.5 million, $12 million a year, whatever the hell it is. It's like, come on. I don't care about $5,000 if I'm making $12 million, right? Or
one game suspect, though. I'm a little disappointed in you. I think that's a little too strong. Look, if it was a repeat offender or something, like, it's McDavid, I get the frustration. He takes all these extra hacks all game long, and I do want. It did look. He went out of his way. It was late. You could tell that it was 1,000% purely out of frustration. So that's telling you there was intent involved. But
right, that's my problem with it.
Yeah, but
it's the intent.
I don't know if you can suspend a guy for that play. I would be disappointed if the NHL gave him a suspect. I like the fact that he was fined, and now it's, hey, if you do this again, you will get suspended. I think this is a good, if you do this again, you're now on the books. You are now registered as a guy who's done this previously. You do this again, you're done. But I don't think it's fair based off of his track record of how many years. And do you think, I know it shouldn't happen, but how much of this is, come on, imagine suspending Connor McDavid and now the next Edmonton game. Like, we want people watching this kid. Not that that's right, but did that play a role into it?
I mean, I guess a little bit, but I don't think it should sometimes, because, maybe it's tough to do in season. Let's just call it what it is and say it's tough to do in season like this. The offseason needs to be about defining all of this then. What's a good and clean hit, like Crosby asked? What's, all that stuff. The officiating of the game, it needs to be better defined, because if that's only a fine, and then you talk about what Crosby looked at and saying, well, what's a clean hit then? Because that guy got a game misconduct too. Or like McDavid didn't even get kicked out of the game for it. Why? Why didn't he get kicked out of the game when a guy laid a perfectly legitimate hit on somebody, and the result of it and the reaction got him kicked out of a game?
Well, let me counter this. If you elbow someone, what's the difference? I know that there's a difference, but imagine rubbing someone off in the corner and getting a pretty good elbow on someone as you're rubbing them off into the corner, and then the play McDavid had, which is an elbow, and there's no blood, it didn't break anything, or like, what's the difference between an elbow and then an elbow game misconduct? Like, do you think that crossed the line of game misconduct compared to an elbow that just gets up naturally as you're rubbing someone off along the boards?
Yes, because given the situation too. I mean, by that point they're down 4-0, and they or maybe they weren't. I guess because I'm assuming was that the roughing penalty he got? I guess because it says roughing against Kotkaniemi.
Probably,
so I guess he got a roughing penalty. But
I guess I'm being hypocritical, because if that was Wilson, I would be saying that. But that goes back to, like, if Marchand does it, if Wilson does it, I can get behind it. But if Claude Giroux did that, if Crosby did that, like if Sidney Crosby threw an elbow like that, I don't know if I'd sit there and say he deserves to get suspended for it, because I think it's situational based off of who does it. I really do. Not that the intent, the malicious of it, it's still there, but it does matter if you are a guy that naturally does look for that, or if it's 1 in a million situation from a player. I do think it matters.
See, but then that's my problem with it, though, then, because now you're playing favorites, essentially. It's you can't afford to suspend that guy because you feel like he's the face of the league. And I'm not saying he's not. It's just, but you're setting a precedent. You're setting a precedent that there are certain players out there that can take liberties.
But that's true.
They will never be suspended. Well, but then that's what needs to change, And I'm not saying that what needs to change is that you need to suspend everybody. What it is that you need to define that if you cross that line to an extent, it doesn't matter who you are.
If Bergeron throws that elbow.
Well, yeah, he's not getting suspended, but you need to change that precedent, is my point.
I don't think he deserves, but I do believe, like, I don't think you deserve, if Bergeron threw that, I don't want him suspended. Like, I don't think he deserves to get suspended because he's got a track record of 3,000 years in this league where that's a huge outlier. So, like, I don't think you deserve to get a suspension, a one-game suspension because of that elbow compared to a Wilson. And I know that's unfair. I'm with you. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and
Right.
it is unfair. But, I mean, that's the nature of sports. It's like a flagrant foul. If LeBron James throws a foul that should be maybe crossing the line a bit, he hasn't had a flagrant foul in like 15 years before that one against the 76ers. He's not going to get suspended. If it's someone who's known to be a pest, like a Dwight Howard, he's going to get that foul. He's going to get a flagrant 2, and he's going to get suspended based off the track record. Not fair, but I think that's just where sports are, and I'm okay with it.
My complaint with that, though, then is this. If, okay, you don't want to kick McDavid out of a game. You don't want to suspend him. Okay, he's a face of the league. I get it. He's got a little bit more leeway than others. If Kotkaniemi is hurt off of that, instead of laughing on the bench after it's over, does it change the perspective of it? Because now that guy's going to miss more than one.
Yeah.
Now you've got to do something, right?
Yeah.
So it goes back to, again, defining not just clean hits, but defining why is it that we have to wait for a guy to be injured, seriously injured, missing up to a week or two with a concussion or something or more, to then go, now the suspension gets dropped. That's the problem with it, because you can't just let people go around and throw elbows like that. And as long as the guy is okay and laughing afterwards, it doesn't matter.
But I think he was laughing for a reason, because I don't think it made as much.
Because it's a game that was out of hand already.
I don't think it made as much contact as he made it seem, which then goes back to I don't think he deserved to get suspended, because I think there was a little bit of a how do you do, a little how do you, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, okay, look, and I saw there was some discussion that it was more of a shoulder hit and the elbow is just a reactionary thing. Okay, fine. It still doesn't take away, at least from my vantage point, it still doesn't take away the fact that it was deliberate, it was late, it was still an attempt to throw a high hit. And what does that say? That says that the best player in the world, out of frustration, went out there trying to hurt somebody potentially. It didn't happen that way. He may not have even hit his head, but it doesn't matter. And there was a better shot later. I believe I saw there was a tweet that PJ Stock put out that was really good, that kind of detailed it. It had a really good picture with it that kind of showed that maybe he did get more of the head than we thought. And then on top of it, like, just explained how purposeful it was. And as a result of that, there should have been more action than what there was. And that's
I could live with a heavier fine, because I do agree that it was clear that he was pissed.
That's what the league needs to do also then, is set bigger parameters than $5,000 is the maximum allowable fine for stuff like that, and then you'll see it disappear too. Right now you have such a wide gap between between what's suspendable and what the maximum fine is, that it's nothing. It's change. It's pocket change for everybody. So let's just, that is what it is. And
I like it. I like it.
It's over. And here's the thing. It's over. Both teams are going to play another game. Montreal's got a game on Thursday night. Edmonton's, I think, off until Friday. Edmonton's. We got another Battle of Alberta over the weekend. All right.
Hopefully. I mean, there was a COVID issue, wasn't there? I don't know if that was Flames or
it was
okay.
Vancouver.
It was Vancouver. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
Vancouver already had one on the list. They added a second and a coach, and that's why they just bagged the game. But I believe I can quickly check, because it's not going to be that hard to find. That was a one-off for Calgary, wasn't it? That was a quick little stop in Vancouver on the way to more games against Edmonton. Wherever. I mean, they've got Vancouver on their schedule week out, which is kind of a question mark at this point. But they're just basically, all that happens now is they're on their way to Edmonton. They never even came close to playing that team. So Calgary should be fine.
Yeah, well, they're not fine in terms of actually playing the hockey games, because they stink. Anyway, with that being said, we'll end this one here. Durso, a little back and forth here on that Connor McDavid stuff. We're getting back into it a little bit. I have to throw you a mean elbow. How about that?
I mean, look, I know.
I get your point. All right, you're looking at it from he was frustrated standpoint. I look at it as, he doesn't ever do it.
I don't mind a captain trying to go out and do something that says what's going on is not right. But he did it in such a way that it nearly crossed that line. Like,
it did.
The fact that, let's just say, it's close because we're having that discussion, right? I mean, if we could have just sat there and said, "Oh, look what he did. He tried to fire his team up. It backfired. He took a penalty, by himself, by the way, because he didn't draw anybody else into the situation." Okay.
Maybe they should trade him to the Flyers for Shane Gostisbehere.
then it's just a but then it's just a one-off situation within the game. We're not talking about it the next day. But this has been going, like, we're talking about it 2 days after it happened. It was big discussion on Wednesday. And that's there's the reason for it. It's the best player in the world who let the frustration get the better of him. No one's saying don't go out and try to spark your team and lay a big hit or do something like that. But he really came close to crossing the line where he could have been suspended, right? I mean, I don't think anybody's arguing that. He could have been suspended. Like, what you were saying is that you wouldn't have agreed with it if he was suspended, but you're not denying that it could have happened that way.
If it was another player, I don't even think it's a Connor McDavid. I think if it's a player with a track record, then yeah. It's not so much it's McDavid, it's track record.
But the fact that you can look at the same action and just replace the player and say, yeah, you know what? Somebody could have gotten a game or two for that, right? Based on track record, then that's why the conversation's relevant, because the only reason that it happened the way it did is because of who he is.
Well, you know what they say, Durso. I'm never wrong. So...
yeah.
That's the best part about
wrong.
That's the best part about this business, you know? It's like, oh, yeah, well, guess what? I'm never wrong because they're all my opinions. So with that being said, I'm never wrong. I'm never wrong.
Good deal.
Yeah. We'll end it there. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.